And actually, while they do that, okay, so first question, anyone here in either of my sessions last year when I was at PRI? Okay, keep your hands up, and I'll explain this story. She's coming around, but this is my daughter Nora, and she's bringing you cookies. And I literally had somebody, cheaters. I literally had someone come up while everyone was coming in and said, okay, I was in your session last year, did you bring us cookies? And I was like, I did. Okay, so while he's fixing that, here's saying, keep your hands up till she gets you a cookie if you're legit. Okay, so last year what happened is I had signed up to come do the PRI show, and I'd done SEMA like 8 or 9 times. And last year was going to be my second year doing the PRI show. And my daughter, who's passing out cookies, she goes and does Solo 2 racing autocross with my husband. Loves sports cars. So we live in Pittsburgh, so it's like a 5-6 hour drive. And I said, okay, I'll see if I can get an extra floor pass, and you can miss a day of school, and you can come with me, and you can go check out all this stuff. Thank you so much. So we wait till she gets out of school. We drive over here. We come rolling in at like 11:15, and I go in and I'm checking into our hotel, and the guy at the desk looks at me and says, I don't have your reservation. I was like, okay, but I should be on the PRI list. And he goes, that's next week? Now, in 22 years and probably 300 and some speaking engagements, I've never mixed a date up until last year. Thank God I came a week early and not a week late. If any of you are local to here, you would know that last year, the weekend before PRI, was the Big Ten football championship. So yeah, I'm an Ohio State grad, so not the best year for me on that one, but go fellow Bucks out there. So as you can imagine, that meant by 11:30 or 11:45, when we're realizing we don't have any place to stay, we had to drive 2 hours home before we could even find a place for a hotel room. And of course, she couldn't come back with me the next week because of work. So when I did my sessions, I said, okay, I promised her I would do my best to absolutely kick butt. And all the people that were in my session, I said, now, if you give me good ratings and you make sure they bring me back, I will bring cookies next year.
You kept your word.
So I kept my word. I baked chocolate chip cookies yesterday. They're really good chocolate chip cookies too. Now, I still have some cookies left. So here's the other part. Once I get rolling here, I'm not a wait for the end kind of person for questions. If you have a question, put your hand up. Because honestly, as you guys start to engage with me and you guys start to ask questions, we can customize a little bit what we're talking about. It's going to be far more relevant to you. If I start skipping slides, don't worry about it. 1, I will send you my whole slide deck. 2, I always come with enough slides that if you guys are really quiet, I can fill the space. If you guys are really engaged, there are sections that I can jump over. It's going to be okay. You're not going to miss anything. So if you ask a cookie-worthy question, you get a cookie. Okay? So keep that one in mind. All right. So with that said, let me get a quick drink, and then we're going to get rolling. And also say a thanks on behalf of Nora, because I see her headed towards the door because she's going to go check everything out. So my last year, people, you got me my credibility back. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is going to be kind of a combination of Facebook and Instagram and a little bit of overall social media strategy. Because what I want to do for you is not necessarily dive super deep into every single feature of both of these channels, but I want to give you a little bit more realistic perspective and, to an extent, some permission to probably be a little less stressed about what you're doing on these channels. Because out of curiosity, how many of you wake up in the morning and you're like, man, I can't wait to go do my social media stuff? Yeah, so the one guy in the back. Okay, that's it. Now, for next perspective, I am technically now, let's jump up to this one, okay, why you would listen to me. As I said, I spent about 22 years traveling all over. I developed social media marketing curriculum for a couple hundred universities throughout the US. I trained Ford's marketing department. This is what I did for a really long time. And then I became a character in a Hallmark Christmas movie. And by that I mean I moved to a small town in the middle of nowhere where I ended up retiring from my big corporate job and bought a small town diner and run a nonprofit, and now I live in a town of 2,300 people on my husband's family-owned farm that's been in his generation for 100 years, and I do this for my church, and I do this for my business, and I do this for my nonprofit, but basically stereotypical storyline of every Hallmark Christmas movie you've ever seen. So I got all the past credibility, and I had done all the shows then, and actually about a year after I retired, so yeah, nonprofit, cheesecake, I do all the baking for our diner, which is why I brought you guys cookies. So after I retired, the show had actually called to ask if I'd come back, and I'm like, well, I'm kind of retired now. And they said, but don't you still do this for all your businesses? And I was like, yeah. And they said, well, I guess that does kind of change your perspective on how you can teach it. And I was like, oh, does it ever? So let me offer you also the reassurance that I left the social media marketing industry because I describe it to people as running down the side of a mountain while an avalanche is chasing you. Because as you guys know, every time you turn around, someone's going, have you used this new tool? Have you tried this new thing? Are you on this new channel? Are you doing this? And it's freaking exhausting, right? So I bought a restaurant 13 weeks before the pandemic hit. And that year of my life was less stressful than most of the time I spent in social media marketing. So again, if that gives you a little perspective, now what I'm going to tell you today is going to be all my knowledge and background, but kind of tempered by 2 or 3 years of running this actually from within businesses, okay? So I'm not gonna tell you the same stuff that all the consultants are necessarily gonna tell you, because I'm not interested in having you pay me a bunch of money unless you want me to bake you a cheesecake. So, all right. If you want the slides, it's thejen@gmail.com. I'll put this up several more times. So you don't have to try and take pictures of every slide or frantically write down everything I tell you. I will send you the whole deck. It's not a problem. Okay, so when we're looking at Facebook and Instagram, we're basically looking at properties owned by Meta. You know, that's the parent company now. So quick perspective, not that I think anyone here has any concerns over whether or not these are legitimate sites you need to be on, but we're now looking at 3.71 billion monthly active Meta users. Basically, 1 out of every 3 human beings on the planet is on Facebook. That's like 1 out of every 5 is on Instagram. So huge, huge numbers. Also, I want to address the idea that we hear a lot, especially as we see a rise on things like TikTok and some of the other channels, of people going, Facebook's dead, it's dying, it's dying. You hear it over and over. Facebook is not dead. This is not an accurate portrayal. You have to understand there's a difference between something reaching market saturation and something being dead. So we look at there's less growth within the United States. Okay, but that's because everybody's already freaking there. How many more people are you going to get until you have everybody age up enough to get into the mix? So keep that one in mind. Okay, that said, even with all the other hype we hear, you know, again, with TikTok and things, Facebook is still the single #1 reach channel across the board globally, okay? When we look at the numbers, you can see globally, Facebook, about twice the usage of Instagram and about 3 times the usage of TikTok. Now again, there is no denying the fact we're seeing a really big uptick in TikTok, but we'll talk a little bit later about that just to give some perspective as well. And then within the United States, with the exception of YouTube, Facebook is still the single biggest reach everywhere. Now, there is truth that depending, oh wow, we had people on the floor. Okay, awesome. There is truth to the fact that among younger demographics, and by younger, I don't necessarily even mean millennials anymore, I'm talking Generation Z. We do see much less usage on Facebook from them. But here's another thing that I'll put out there for you. Most of the data, studies, and articles you see that say, you know, the Gen Z is leaving Facebook in droves and, you know, they're not there, is all based on self-reported data. Now, if you have teenagers, answer me this question. How often do they appropriately and accurately self-report their activities? Okay, so the thing I want you to understand is that yes, we see an uptick in other channels for them. And yes, they are less likely to be there, but there is still a large portion of them there. Just because they are not actively posting their created content on that channel doesn't mean they're there. The 18-year-old that just walked out the door never posts anything to her feed on Facebook because she's posting it on other channels. But she tags me in crap all the time. So I know she's there, and I know she's looking. So something to keep in mind. Now, if your audience is 30 or over, then you've still got a very good chunk of people there. And if your audience is 50 or over, it is probably the single biggest reach you're going to get anywhere is going to be on Facebook, with Instagram being second. Okay. When we look at the kind of overall data of how people use it, actually I'm going to jump past this one real quick. I want to get to this. How many of you own the business that you're here to kind of represent? Okay, pretty good chunk. And how many of you are the person responsible for any social media activity? Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, so realistically, most of you are not going to be able to have a really good, active, well-done presence on 4 or 5 channels. It's just not feasible. It's too much time, okay? So I want to encourage you that it is totally okay for you to go, look, here's the 1 or 2 channels where I've got the highest likelihood of getting a return on my investment. I'm going to focus on those, okay? No company has ever failed because they weren't doing every single thing on social media. There are loads of companies who have done better and improved as a result of their social media activity, but no one's ever failed for that reason. So on that front, if you can't get to all of them, it's okay. So when we look at cross-usage data, and what I mean by that is the amount of people who use Facebook, who also use Twitter, also use Instagram, also use whatever. The 2 places we see the highest level of overlap, meaning if you could only pick one channel, you have the highest likelihood of getting in front of people, are Facebook and YouTube. Okay, Instagram is going to come in third, and then depending on your age range, TikTok, Reddit, a couple of the others are going to come in. But Facebook and YouTube are the 2 places that you're pretty much guaranteed to get in front of everybody, okay? So when you're picking where you're going to prioritize your time of Facebook and Instagram, if you skew young age for your target audience, prioritize Instagram. If you skew above 30, above 35, I would skew more Facebook, and then I would try and have some YouTube mixed in with it. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. And again, if anyone has questions, just throw the hand up and interrupt me. It's all good. Okay, so let's look at a little bit of Instagram data too. So Instagram is now sitting at more than 1.4 billion active monthly users. They spend an average of about 30 minutes a day on the platform. If you want scary numbers, I think the current TikTok one is like 95 minutes a day. But again, younger demographics. 60% of Instagram users are logging in at least daily, and almost 40% check in multiple times a day. Now, this is a good thing. We're going to talk about algorithms a little later, and that frequency of checking in, that frequency of visiting, that increases your likelihood of being able to get a message in front of people. Now, to look at how this stacks up some, Instagram's roughly 1.5 times the users of TikTok, 3 times the users of Snapchat, 3.5 times how many people are on Twitter. So again, it's only coming in behind Facebook and YouTube in terms of your ability to get reach. Okay, when we look at engagement on Instagram, I will say engagement is consistently higher on Instagram than it is on Facebook. Reach is consistently higher on Instagram than it is on Facebook. Part of that is because there's less people on Instagram. So when we get to the algorithm section, we talk about that. I'll explain how that works. But overall, if your age group fits with Instagram, you do have a higher natural likelihood of being able to both get in front of them and get engagement from them if you're on Instagram. Okay. 90% of Instagram users do follow businesses. And about half of users say they have actively purchased a product after being exposed to it on Instagram. Instagram is a very aspirational, inspirational type platform, so people do go there looking for, what's cool, what's trendy, what do I want to get? And then roughly 20% of Instagram stories result in a user sending a direct message, reaching out and actually contacting the company. Now, when we look demographic-wise, it's interesting because in the last year, If we look globally, men have actually pulled ahead of women on Instagram. I was actually really surprised when I checked out the data for this year because it always skewed much heavier to women. In the United States, it does still skew heavier, but we're talking like a 5% difference now. I mean, we really are getting to where it's almost even reach. Clearly, younger users are gonna outpace older users. Black and Hispanic populations outpace Caucasians. So depending on what your target audience is, Instagram can be really good. College and high school grads outpace, non-high school grads, and urban and suburban are outpacing pretty heavily any rural users. So again, if you have kind of in the back of your mind, what your target demographic looks like, that can help you decide where you might want to lean your efforts towards. So I mentioned that engagement is really good on Instagram. Okay, roughly 4 times, let's pause into your question first.
Sorry. So I'm kind of in the fight with a lot of this stuff, but and I'll preface my question with an understanding that participating in each platform is done differently.
Yes.
But with like Meta Business Suite,
yes,
I essentially can participate in both at the same time, right?
Technically.
So,
technically.
But am I diluting myself by trying to cater to both of those different things rather than focusing on creating a Facebook?
Okay, so we're going to dig into that, but I'm going to give you the quick answer now and the longer answer when I get to that section. Quick answer is yes, you can absolutely use the publishing suite to cross-post to both places. The downside of doing that is that there are nuances to how people interact on both sites. You don't use hashtags on Facebook, but you do use hashtags on Instagram. People are a little more likely to direct share content on Facebook than they are on Instagram. So some of how you present it makes a difference. But also, when we get into talking about the algorithm, Meta downgrades what they view as duplicate content. If you publish to Instagram and copy it over to Facebook, they know you are publishing something that is not original to Facebook, and they're less likely to show it to people, and vice versa. So even a small amount of tailoring to your message to say, okay, look, I know video does better here, imaging does better here. It's saying, here's the message I want to send out, and here's the 2 tweaked versions, that same content, but just tweaked. And taking the time to do that makes a big difference in both reach and engagement. Okay, that was a cookie-worthy question. So I can either throw a cookie at you, or you can come over and get a cookie. Are you brave? Can I toss you a cookie? All right, there you go. That was your cookie-worthy question. Okay, was waiting for all the other hands to jump up. Okay, so let's see. So we talked that one. Okay, so we're moving on to the next session. So demographics, it jumped backwards on me. Okay, so with Instagram, for a long time, Instagram was the place where people posted pictures of things they thought were cool, and then we kind of transitioned to posting pictures of themselves engaging with things they think is cool, which is why every time you go on vacation now, you always see the poor boyfriend or the friend that's getting dragged around by the person that's making them take all of the pictures. So I'm like, oh, look, waiting for the wave to hit them when they're on the beach, because that's, in the influencer world, that's what we've moved to. But the nice thing is we've also seen a lot of growth and development on Instagram because we've had videos come in, because we've had more engagement opportunities, because you have shopping access, direct link access. There's a lot more room to really be able to engage back and forth and not just go, hey, here's my pretty picture. So as a marketing side of things, we've really seen Instagram in the last probably 3 years make a huge leap forward to make it much easier and more realistic for businesses. So still primarily lifestyle and kind of brand oriented. And the thing I tell people when we look at overall social media is you have to have a little bit of understanding of sort of the psychology and the mindset of where people are when they're using different social channels. So when you go to Facebook, generally you're looking for kind of news and social connection of what's going on in your sphere. Okay, that's the mindset we're in. We're trying to discover what's happening. When you go to Pinterest, a lot of times we're looking for inspiration of what to do or how to do it. When we're going to Instagram, we're looking for pretty things, trendy things, things that we get excited about. When we go to TikTok, we've given up on life for the day and we just want to be entertained for like the next hour. And when we go to YouTube, it's a mix. If you're a younger audience, you're generally going for entertainment. If you're over 40, you're usually going because you want to learn how to do something. And the perfect example of this is my 72-year-old father-in-law who retired as a dentist about 2 years ago. And I swear to you, he called me and he said, "Jen, do you know about YouTube?" Yes, Dad, I do. I've taught about it for like 20 years, but what specifically about it? You can learn anything. He's like, "This is amazing." And I like literally he gets up, he has his coffee, he goes to YouTube, and whatever he wants to know that day, he just watches it. He's like, "I'm building this new cabinet, and I fixed this new thing." I'm like, okay, cool. But it's a perfect representation of the mindset that, again, based on the generation. So if you're selling parts to, hobbyist racers or people who love the classic, like if that's your age set, then getting that content up that here's the how-to and here's, what you need for your kit and for your project and everything else, YouTube is an amazing part. But since we're not talking about YouTube today, that's all the little bit I'll give you on that one. Okay, so just a quick reminder for anyone who came in late, if you do want my slides, that's the email address. Just shoot me one and say, "Slides, please," and I'll happily send it back. Okay, so when we look at Facebook and Instagram, there's 3 key benefits to your business for you to get involved in these. I mean, clearly there's more, but the 3 that we really want to focus in on today. One is the idea of linkable suggestions, and it's really one of the biggest changes that came to Instagram just within the last year and a half. The fact that you can now add a link into any story you put up as opposed to, "See the link in our bio, go there," and you can only have one at a time. As a marketer, that was awful. So that freedom coming in, that really elevated Instagram a lot, more so to the level of what we have with Facebook. Because when you're having a conversation with someone and someone's going, "Hey, I experienced this thing, this restaurant was great," or, "Did you see this movie trailer?" We're then relying on recall and action at a later point in time for someone to actually follow through and do something with that. But if we're sharing content on Instagram, if we're sharing content or an experience on Facebook, you can take the action right then. You can follow the link to go look at the product. You can follow a link to go register for a show or for a race or for whatever. So that in and of itself makes it elevated in terms of sort of the social interaction, because people can take an immediate action that we can actually track and know that it happened and have that data to fine-tune our marketing efforts with. The second one is the idea of trust and credibility. Okay, so there are nearly 5 billion items a day shared across Meta, and about a third of people go to social media content or social media sites like Facebook specifically for news and information and updates. Okay, they're seeking out this information. And in a world where we have influencer accounts now on things like Instagram, you have people who trust the insight and information of virtual strangers. They're saying, "Look, because you liked it, because I'm seeing this trend a whole bunch of times," they're more likely to take action. Does anyone remember when Candy Crush swept through Facebook? Okay, and like the first time someone sent you an invite, you're like, "Don't waste my time." And the second and third and fourth and fifth time someone sent it, you're like, but somewhere along the way you gave in and you downloaded Candy Crush and you played it. Because as we get that repeated exposure, as we see a whole bunch of people mentioning it or talking about it, and because it's clickable and we can do it, eventually that tide starts to shift. So we get a lot of trust benefit here. Also the idea of the very, very heavy time investment. Because people wake up in the morning and they reach over and they get their phone, and before they get out of bed, they check their social media feeds. And when they get in bed at night, they check their social media feeds before they put their phone away. And when they're waiting in line, or over and over and over. We are constantly connected. We constantly have the notification. We are there like all the time. I think the average person is now up to like 2 hours and 45 minutes a day on a social media channel. That doesn't count other screen time. So lots of opportunity. Oh, see, mention YouTube again. Okay. 58 minutes is the average daily time on Facebook. 28 minutes is the average daily time on Instagram. 19 minutes is the average daily time on YouTube, unless you're a Gen Zer. They spend an average of 60 minutes a day on YouTube and 90 minutes a day on TikTok. So again, younger audience, gonna be there way, way, way more often. Okay, so what all of that stuff I just told you means is really that there's a lot of potential here for you based on how you choose to approach it. And that's a good thing. The bad thing is that often also leads to a lot of stress and a lot of pressure and a lot of, okay, I have to be doing all of this. So let's talk a little bit about some reality check. Social media can really impact your business in a positive way, but it takes time. With the rare exception of the thing that just happens to hit and go viral, it takes time. You don't get on social media and 2 months later have your sales doubled unless you happen to hit one of those viral things. And that's okay, because very few people are gonna have that happen, and much like anything else in your business, you're gonna have to invest the time, the effort, and the patience to be able to get where you wanna go. We're looking for sustainable buildup. But what happens is most companies, and how they use social media, they're either throwing as much as they can, hoping something sticks. Well, that didn't work, let's put something else out. That didn't work, let's put something else out. Or you're avoiding it and feeling guilty about avoiding it. So I would like to help you find your way into the middle. So the two things I really want you guys to walk away from today. One, I want you to have a better strategic approach to how you're gonna post and what you're gonna put up. I want there to be a little more opportunity to go, okay, what is it I'm publishing? And I wanna pair that with the encouragement that you can actually publish less so that the quality of what you put out there can be higher, and that you will still come out ahead than you would if you were just trying to rapid fire get stuff out there. So the way I'm gonna help you with that is I wanna give you some knowledge and understanding of social media algorithms, not the engineering side, but the real person, I only care because I have to do something with Facebook and Instagram version of an algorithm. So when we look at the strategy side, and this seems like such a simple thing, but everybody misses it because of how we think about social media. You have to have a strategy, right? And the strategy is not, I want more followers. The strategy is, why do you want the people on social media to engage with your company, and what are you trying to get them to do? What could happen that it would make it worth your while to spend time and effort on these channels? That's the question you have to ask, because that follower that you have, they only mean something if you're leading them into a funnel that's getting them to buy a product, take an action, or do something that results in a positive impact on the bottom line of your business, right? Otherwise, you have inadvertently joined the entertainment industry and you're getting nothing out of it. And I don't think that's the goal of most of you here. So we want to make sure anything you're doing is not focused on driving fans, but is focused on what actually will make a difference to my bottom line this quarter, next quarter, 4 years down the road. Okay, so I want you to be thinking about what your company goals are for the year. Because if we know a goal, then we can look at social media to say, how might we use social media to accomplish that? So if we're looking at saying, okay, when someone comes in for an oil change, we want to be doing, tire rotation alignment and balancing as well. And we want to increase the percentage of people who are doing that, because we can't necessarily handle more volume right now, but we could do a little more work on every car that came in, and we could increase the amount of revenue we're getting per customer. So if that's a business goal and that's kind of where you are right now, that's where you can start to work your way backwards to say, this is what we might be able to use social media to accomplish. Is that everyone tracking with me? Any questions there? Okay, good. So let's keep going. So to do that, you gotta know what areas of your business social media can actually impact, right? Okay, so the 3 key areas, one is the idea of presence. So what I mean by that is sometimes it's not just about the ultimate sale. Sometimes you're breaking into a new market. Sometimes you're trying to test the waters and see what people are interested in. So sometimes social media is the opportunity to gain exposure, okay? An introduction to a new audience, a chance to make some connections with people who are influencers so you can get some feedback on what they're hearing from people about what they're interested in. anything related to your presence is something that you can usually impact with social media. Brand-related goals, now that's not that people see you, it's what they think about you. Okay, do they have if you've got a reputation problem because maybe there was some crisis with one of your products, people are a little gun shy, that's the type of thing social media can be used to work on repairing that public perception. Or again, reaching into a new audience and changing how people view you. So brand-related goals. And then of course, conversion-related goals. One of the single best things about social media as opposed to so many other forms of marketing. Okay, one of the single best things about online marketing as opposed to so many other forms of marketing is how easy it is for us to get the data that tracks someone from exposure through the process to the final endpoint of where we want them to be. You know, if someone sees your ad in a magazine, if someone hears you on a podcast, it's really difficult to link that exposure with the ultimate sale. It can be done, but it's a lot harder. Whereas if someone gets exposure to you somewhere through online marketing and you have your data analytics set up properly, you can see where does someone drop out of the funnel. And you can start to identify, oh, if they're all dropping off here, okay, is there a problem with how our process works? Is there a problem with our pricing? You know, are we targeting this wrong? You have much more ability to impact what happens because of the data you can bring in. And that's also the type of data that can help all your other sides of marketing as well. Because again, if you learn that someone's dropping off because of a price point issue or because you have a shipping policy or a return policy that people are upset with, that same thing is probably impacting the people that are buying or not buying through other channels. So again, it helps you refine your business. Okay, so in trying to figure out what these are, for larger companies, I would tell people you ask each of your different departments, okay, what's the thing weighing on your mind right now? You know, for the next 1 or 2 quarters, what are you really trying to go, this is the problem we're facing, this is what we're trying to get to. Okay, since the majority of the room said you are the business owner, you go to your spouse or you go to your best friend and you say, what am I constantly telling you I'm worried about? Because they probably know, because they listen to you talk at the end of the day and they know what you're stressed about. So when it's not coming up top of mind, that's your great resource to go and say, okay, what is it that I need to accomplish? So as you look at all these goals, then you go back to that place where I said, okay, here's the goals, here's the things we're trying to accomplish that social media gives us a shot at, okay? And that's how you kind of put those together. Then I want you to narrow down your list. 2 or 3 goals. Just pick 2 or 3. Just start with that. You might have 20, that's okay. Which ones seem to have the highest likelihood, or do you have the most confidence that you can accomplish, and start with those. It's like paying down debt. You start with the highest debt load, or the lowest debt load first, you get all that paid off, and then you move everything to the next one. You snowball your efforts over time. Now, when you're creating these goals, you want to make sure you're creating a SMART goal, which if I have any project managers or people, they're all gonna be familiar with this one. My husband's a project manager. He always beats it into our kid's head. But is it a SMART goal? I don't know, Dad. Okay, well, let's talk it through. So a SMART goal is specific. That means that if you tell me this is your goal, I should not be able to walk across the room, hand it to someone else and go, yep, that's my goal. Your goal needs to be more specific than that, okay? Because it should be specific to you. It should be measurable. How will you know if you accomplished it or didn't accomplish it, okay? It should be attainable. Can you realistically pull this off? It is great to aim high, but when we're working through this process, sometimes that means we need to step back a little bit and say, okay, here's what we want to do. Is it relevant? Meaning, when you get that goal out in front of your audience, is it also something they're going to be interested in because it pertains to your business, it pertains to your audience? And then finally, is it time-based? When will you know if you've accomplished it or not? So that's why when it's things like, you know, I would talk to companies that, we need to get our social media presence better, we need more followers and more sales. Okay, what departments do you need more sales in? What product are you trying to increase sales on? What's the timeline? If we're going to have this budget, when do you need to have enough ROI coming back from it to justify continuing your investment? These are all the things you need to know. So with that one, I didn't just bring cookies. I have another present for you guys. So if you email me at thejen@gmail.com, and again, only thing I can tell you at this point is cookies, so I promise not selling anything. I have a 50-page workbook that I put together for the SEMA show, for the training I did out there, and it is literally questions on how you put your whole strategy together. When I worked with clients, this was the document I used when we did audits to say, okay, what's your strong point? What's your struggle point? How do people perceive you? How do you wish they perceived you? All of the things that we would gather together to say, here's the data we need to figure out what it looks like to move forward with something. So whether or not you do this in-house, this is great for in-house, but also if you hire out your marketing, this is the data that being able to give this to a consultant and say, here's what we've gathered, we're looking for a strategy based on this. One, it'll save you a bunch of money and then you'll like me more so than even when I give you cookies. But two, it will help you pick a consultant, because if you ever have a consultant or a company come in to pitch you and they start talking about getting you followers, I want you to go, thank you so much for your time. We'll call you if we need you. And move on to the next person. Because any consultant worth their salt should be coming in saying, what are you trying to do in your business? What have you done so far? What's working? What's not? If they're not talking to you about SMART style goals, they don't have to use that word, but you know the concept. If they're not talking to you about what you specifically need to do on social media, they're just gonna do the exact same thing for you that they do for every other person. And you're gonna have someone managing it, and you're gonna feel happy because you don't have to worry about it, but it's gonna be on auto set, and it's not really gonna do what you need or want it to do, okay? So this is my extra gift. Okay, before we move into algorithm, any questions so far? No one wants a cookie? Really? Okay, we got a question. Because you want a cookie or because you have a question?
I just want a cookie.
Okay. You know what though? You're brave. If you'll come up and come get a cookie, by all means, come get a cookie. Because you were brave. So, do you want a cookie too, or do you have a question? Okay, ask your question.
Hashtags don't work on Facebook.
No, they don't factor into the algorithm on Facebook.
Oh, they don't factor in. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you're not hurting yourself to put it there, other than one, you look a little bit like you don't know what you're doing because other people aren't putting them there, and two, I would imagine it sends a bit of a signifier to Facebook as well that this was content that was probably meant for Instagram. So personally, I wouldn't leverage hashtags on Facebook. There are marketing consultants who will disagree with me and tell me that I'm wrong. But I'll tell you, based on any testing I've ever done and all of my connections in the industry, I would not put them on Facebook. But I would use them on YouTube, I would use them on Twitter, I would use them on Instagram. But that was a cookie-worthy question if you want to come get one.
Can you use too many hashtags?
You can use too many hashtags, more so just because it gets overwhelming and ridiculous. But I'll tell you, on Instagram, the sweet spot seems to be between 8 and 12. Posts that have between 8 and 12 hashtags tend to perform significantly better than ones that have less or more. Okay.
So, stepping kind of away from hashtags, but to actual physical tags, as far as like your Instagram content goes, do you recommend, doing the @ and tagging when you're writing your actual caption?
Yes.
Or tagging an actual photo or putting them down at the bottom? Because that's kind of where I always get stuck and how to integrate the physical @ handle in my content. So
Instagram says that with hashtags and with the @ tags, that whether it's in your caption or in the post itself, that it makes no difference.
Okay, cool.
I've never found that it makes a difference. I can come up with many reasons they'd lie to me on that one. But when I look at the other data they release, I don't think they lie on that one. So I think it's personal preference of how it fits.
What you feel for the aesthetic then. Okay.
Yes, yeah, and you both got cookies if you want to come get your cookies. There's baskets on both sides. But behind you in the blue? In the blue?
Oh, yeah, okay. So you know how Facebook will allow you on the business page to post to Facebook and Instagram
Yes.
in one post?
Yes.
They're saying you should not do that?
You should not do that. And if you're using, how many of you use something like Sprout Social or HubSpot or one of those management platforms? Okay, they're all gonna tell you too that you can just post everywhere. And you can, but you'll damage your organic reach if you do. Okay. So even with those channels, again, use it to set everything up. Okay, here's the other caveat, because there's a trade-off. Facebook, Instagram, anything owned by Meta, they know if you are posting directly or if you are posting through a third-party service. Okay? My gut, based on algorithmic things, is that you're going to have better reach posting organically, because when you're posting through a service, it damages the credibility a little bit because it says, oh, you're bulk publishing so much content that you need to use this, and that there's a difference in reach. We are probably talking about a very small difference in reach, but nonetheless, we tended to use those programs to keep track of what's going where, who was it, like for the overall management, but to still go post direct to channels. There's always a trade-off. You only have so much time. It's a negligible difference, and if it's truly that much of a time saver for you, I don't think anyone needs to feel guilty about doing it that way.
Yeah, I just was curious. They offer it, so I thought
Yeah.
it was a trickery thing.
I don't think it's trickery. I think it's a realistic thing that makes it easier for people to use the services, but it's also something that can impact how things show in the algorithm. Okay, right up here?
So if it detracts from your reach,
Yes.
do you end up with a net gain? If you don't have time to actually do them all, and you were doing one, you said, well, let me use a service, I'll post to all of them. My reach is decline.
It's better to get some content out there with slightly less input than it is to not do it at all because you just realistically can't. So again, that's always the thing I want you guys to remember. There's the ideal way to do something. There's the, okay, this is still going to get it done. And then there is, we'll talk about, you're shooting yourself in the foot when you do it this way. That's not a shooting yourself in the foot scenario. Okay. And cookies, if you want them. Okay, in the back, pink.
What about using it to schedule posts?
Okay, using it to schedule posts. Okay, so you can schedule posts natively from within Facebook and from within Instagram. Using the native platform to schedule will cause no problems for you. There will not be a drop in your ranking, in your reach, or anything. And in fact, I highly encourage people to do that, because a lot of times when you're able to do it is not necessarily the best time of day to get it in front of people. So scheduling gives you much more control over when it's going to go out there. Okay, so let me see. We'll do one more question, and then I got to keep moving forward, and we'll do more questions a little bit later. Over here on the right.
So for the Meta Business Suite, when you're scheduling to post something to Facebook and Instagram,
Yes.
that if they go out at the same time, they could, hurt one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
If you wanted the same post to go to both, could you stagger the time so it's not going out at the same time? Would that still hurt it?
That's a really good, that's a cookie question. Okay, so you get a cookie. Okay, so that is one I do not have specific data on, but I'm going to tell you my gut says having a similar timestamp on both of them, if the content is tailored to each channel, should cause no problem whatsoever. Because it's still within the realm of normal smart usage that your marketing person, your influencer, whoever, they have set times that they sit down to do something. If you're worried about the possibility, then when you go to post them, just use the scheduling feature to have them go, at an interval. So they're not both actively showing up at the same time. Okay.
On the side, we're from the nosebleed section.
Okay, that's fair. I didn't see you, so go ahead.
Okay, so is there an effective time that you think is a great time to post?
So it's going to dramatically depend on who your target audience is. She's asking about effective time to be able to put out a post. The standard is midweek, midday, tends to have the highest engagement levels. But if you're targeting 16 or 17-year-olds, clearly that window between 3:30 and 4:30 is probably going to be the good one. If you're targeting, C-suite executives, then you're probably looking at maybe first thing in the morning, maybe very, very late in the day. So start in one place and do some testing to see where you get good fit, and that's cookie worthy, so come get your cookie. Okay, let's move into the algorithm, because I think this will help with a lot of some of these general concepts. So your biggest value on Facebook and Instagram, okay, we're doing good on timing. Your biggest value in Facebook and Instagram is the news feed, okay? So that means you don't really need to worry about what your headline photo is on Facebook or all the other, what order your posts show up, and people will go on Instagram and, they'll post this picture and this picture, and so that when you look at the feed, everything all matches up, blah, blah, blah. Okay, 2% of people visit your actual page at any point in time. 98% of the engagement happens in the news feed. And in fact, on Facebook, At this point, the number's probably less than 2% because they don't even have to come to your page to follow you. You know, if they see someone else share a piece of content or they get exposure, they can do it from there. It's not a web page. They don't come to your page, so don't worry about that part. Now, the flip side of that is you have to be worried about getting in the newsfeed, both on Facebook and on Instagram. So, why is there an algorithm? Way back in the day, you'd go get on Facebook or you'd go get on Instagram, and whatever the last thing someone posted is what you saw, and you scrolled through chronologically between all the posts. Okay, so at this point in time, if you log into Facebook, the average Facebook user would have roughly 1,500 items that had been posted in the last 24 hours. How many of you want to read 1,500 items? Yeah, none of you. Okay, so Facebook knows this. How many of you go to Facebook and you follow people because you're supposed to, not because you actually care about what they say? Yeah, you know who it is. Okay, so Facebook knows that too, and they know you don't want to see their content, but they know that you are socially obligated to be friends with them. So they will take care of this problem for you, because if they take care of the problem, you'll keep coming back and using their service. So maybe you've noticed that at some point in time you've been out and about, maybe you're at a show here, or maybe you're home for a reunion or something, and you run into somebody that you knew, and you're like, oh, are you on Facebook, or are you on Instagram? And they're like, yeah, and you exchange content and you follow them, and then for like the next week, you see a bunch of their content, right? Okay, that's because when you first follow someone, Facebook goes, oh, you've expressed interest. Let me make sure you see their content. And then over the span of a couple weeks, when their stuff keeps showing up in your feed, and you don't interact with it, and you find yourself going, there's a reason I did not keep in touch with this person. Okay? Facebook notices you're not engaging with them, and every time a post goes up that you don't engage with, Facebook goes, noted, noted, and they show less and less. And then you forget that you followed them until they like have a baby, retire, or get married. And then they magically show up in your feed again, and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even remember I followed that person. Because when that post went up, that is of big enough interest that the people who do engage with them all engage, congratulations, yay, whatever. So Facebook shows it to more people who engage and say, oh, congratulations, whatever, and shows it to more, and it snowballs, okay? The idea of the algorithm is to solve all of those problems for you, which means nobody unfollows you unless you tick them off. They don't have to. It's like spam in email. They don't have to unsubscribe from your email because they can just tell Google, I don't really want to read this, and Google will filter it. So your open rates go down, but your number of subscribers doesn't go down. The same thing happens on Facebook and Instagram. You got all these followers, but they're not seeing your content because Facebook's going, they don't care about your content. They've shown us that. So they stopped showing it to them. So the general rule of thumb, let's see if I can remember this one off the top of my head. If someone goes between 35 and 40 days without actively engaging with your brand, you are effectively dead to them on that channel. Yes?
When you pay to boost your post, does it go to those people?
That's a cookie question. Okay, good job. Okay, so what she's asking, I'm gonna toss it to you. Okay, what she's asking is when you pay to boost posts, does it get to those people? Absolutely, and it's better than that. Because see, I came out of the search engine optimization world like 25 years ago. I transitioned to social media, and there's this really specific line between organic search and paid search, and it gets really blurry in social. So if you pay to boost a post on Facebook or on Instagram, and people engage with that post, it still counts to your organic reach. And Facebook goes, oh, they're interested again, and will start to have you show up again, which means the occasional paid post can be a wonderful way to test concepts, to refresh your reach, all of those things. Because at the end of the day, Facebook goes, well, I mean, if you're willing to give us money, we'll give it a try. And so it'll get out in front of people again. Okay, so that's one more question, and then we'll go back into algorithms. Yeah?
What about doing a post once in a while on Facebook where you tag everybody that's...
Oh, don't do that. Nope. Nope, don't do that. Tagging very specific people who are specifically related to the post in question, absolutely. But not the bigger one, and I'll circle back to it during the algorithm talk. Okay, so now we know why there's an algorithm, okay? So, Oh, I'm pushing the wrong button. I'm pushing the laser pointing button and being upset that it's not switching. Okay, so when we look at the algorithm, their idea is to make sure they're doing the work to pre-screen content to serve you only what makes you happy, so you will spend that 45 or 60 minutes a day on their site, and they can make advertising money off of all of you who are going, okay, I'll give them $5, maybe that'll help. Okay, circle of life. So, algorithms matter, and algorithms are insanely complicated, but that is not the part you have to take away, because at their core, whether it's a search engine algorithm or whether it's a social media algorithm or almost any other algorithm, the entire point is the engineers trying to make that program think as much like a human being as possible. In other words, algorithms just want to be a real boy or girl. So I call it the Pinocchio effect. And that's the part I want you to keep in mind when you're thinking about what you're putting up. How would a human being judge this thing I'm about to do? Might it annoy them? Or would they go, no, that makes sense, that has a lot of value? If the algorithm does not already pick up the thing that might annoy someone, I promise you a future update will. Every time I have ever watched an algorithmic update come through and we've gone, okay, now they're screening for this and making a change for this, it has always been designed to remove from the equation any attempts to game the system and to increase the likelihood that someone will like what they see. So if we come to your idea of tagging everybody, an algorithm is going to go, why are they tagging apps? There's no way what they're putting out is truly relevant to every single person. That seems fishy, and an algorithm is highly likely to catch it and potentially penalize it. Because a human being would go, that's a lot of people to be tagged. I don't think that's relevant. And someone who was tagged and came in and saw how many people are tagged is more likely to leave and potentially be unhappy. So if you limit that back to the core idea, if I tag people, I get their attention, and you use the Pinocchio effect to go, okay, how far is too far? Like, where's the happy space? And you rein that in a little bit, that's where you get into the sweet spot for an algorithm. Does that make sense? Does that make sense to everyone else? Okay, so when you're thinking about what you're doing, you're going, how would my customers react to this, and am I doing it because it's a good and true representation of what I'm putting out there, or am I doing it because I read this thing and I think this will help me get more exposure? If you're doing the latter, eventually it's going to get filtered out. Okay, so with that said, when I was making the slides, I went and I checked. I currently follow 483 pages, not people or what, but a page, the business thing, on Facebook. I scrolled through 100 posts and I tallied as I went. 21 of those posts were sponsored posts or ads, so 21% of my feed was an ad. 13 were pages, but those 13 pages that I have in this category, they were not businesses per se. They were mostly influencers or educational sites or more content-focused sites. They were not companies that are selling product, okay? Then I had 13 groups, Facebook groups. So hobbyists, topical, some of those were tied to a business, but again, based on the topic. 7 actual legitimate business pages, of which only 1 wasn't a local business. So the businesses I see, there are things like, the hardware store that's, in the middle of town, stuff that is going to be more likely to be relevant to me. The one national one that I got was Southwest Airlines, and I'm going to assume that's because, when I open a browser and, you get your most frequently one, Southwest is always on that list because you're always booking a flight to somewhere. So, they know that's one of my very loyal brands. So when we look at this and we go, okay, that's pretty low percentage of shares. I want you to realistically think about both the people you're friends with on Facebook and Instagram and the businesses that you follow on Facebook and Instagram. Now, can anyone here honestly say that there are 20 businesses that they follow on Facebook that they genuinely, truly want to see every post they put up? Didn't think so. How about 10? Are there 10 businesses you follow that you truly want to see every post they put up? Okay, so we got 1. About 5. 5 businesses you follow? Okay, anyone noticing a trend here? I mean, let's think about that with, friend side too. You might have 20 friends that you want to see everything they put up, but most of us, we're somewhere between 5 and 6. Because the reality is what happens is we come to a show like this one and we're exposed to a brand, or we buy a product, or we're researching something, and we get that exposure, and it's just like when we run into the person and we go, oh, you're on Facebook, I'll connect with you. And then the moment passes and we forget. Or someone shares a piece of viral content or something really creative, and you're like, oh, that was great, I'm going to follow that brand. But it wasn't really relevant to you. It's not really the type of thing you're going to go back and buy something from someone. And as we've learned, nobody unfollows a brand, right? They don't have to. They just kind of filter off your page. So what that tends to mean, okay. I'll keep going this way for a second, then I'll jump back to that. What that tends to mean is that you are fighting a nonstop battle between trying to grow your presence, but trying to keep your presence limited to the people who are truly and genuinely interested in you. And how many of you do both, let me see how to word this. How many of you would have sort of an online presence or maybe national following for something specific, but you also have a brick and mortar local shop? Anyone? Okay, just one. Okay, that's cool, because I once had a dermatologist who ran a dermatology practice, but she also had a line of products that she sold globally. And she was trying to do everything from one page. And I was like, oh Lord, we cannot do this, because every time you want to put something up about what's going on at your local shop, you are isolating everybody else who's never going to come in, and thus the need to often split into kind of topical group or topical page, and having something that is specific to the brick and mortar. Okay, so Instagram, for the most part, very, very, very similar. The algorithms between the two, there's a lot of overlap, so you don't tend to have to worry about with both of them. Let me get through this section, and then I'll circle back to you. Okay, so let's look at a couple things that do factor in on the algorithm, all of which will likely make sense if you have Pinocchio effect in the back of your mind. So the first is the idea of interest. So Facebook and Instagram, they're going to look at your past interactions that you've had with an account. We talked about that, to go, are they going to be interested in future engagement? If you can keep someone engaged on a fairly regular basis, you will continue to show up for them. As we know, keeping someone's attention long term can be a challenge. Okay, so that's the challenge that we're faced with here. But they'll also look at topical things. So if there's specific topics, industry, types of content that people tend to engage with, putting up that type of content also increases the likelihood that Facebook or Instagram will show them yours. Also the idea of recency. So we kind of talked about that one as well. When you first follow someone, you're going to see a lot of their content. Over time, that's going to start to fade. So as you're putting content out there for your business onto the web, those people who are logging in multiple times a day, they have more likelihood of seeing your content because they're absorbing more content, okay? So your high volume users are going to be easier to reach than your occasional users. That make sense? Okay. So also the idea of the existing relationship. That is not just their relationship with you, but both of these channels can go, okay, chances are good that if someone follows PRI on these channels, they're probably also following SEMA, and they're probably also following several industry magazines. So if you're engaging over here, that means that the next time, like if you're engaging on PRI content, the next time SEMA puts something up, that's more likely to show up for you too, because they can look at the cross-channel relationships, okay? So as you start to establish relationships with supportive businesses, complementary businesses, influencers, that kind of stuff, you sort of create a little bit of a circle of where these channels can recognize people who engage here are also likely to engage here. And that will help increase your ability to get in front of people. Okay, comments are a huge, 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 huge one. If you can get people to engage with comments, and if you engage back with them in comments, that's one of the single biggest boosters to your exposure. So sometimes at the diner, we'll put up, silly bets or things that are going on that we know will elicit content. So we'd released a some new salad, and my business partner wanted to put both olives and raspberries in it. And I was like, that's ridiculous. You cannot put olives and raspberries in something. And he's like, they're both berries. And I was like, that is not the same at all. So we literally put a post up and we're like, what do you guys think? Do both of these belong in it? And does Jen or Joe think the raspberries should be there? We got all of this response and debate from people going, oh, Jen wants the raspberries. No, Joe wants the raspberries. And I was able to, finally put the post up that said, not only was I so vehemently opposed to the idea of raspberries being mixed with olives, when I programmed it into our system, there was a button for the waitresses to push that said, good God, no raspberries. And that's what it would send back to the kitchen. But something as simple and silly as that. So at the time, we had 2,700 followers on Facebook, okay? This post reached 3 times that many people because there was so much engagement that it pushed it out to more people and then more people, and it just snowballed. So you clearly can't do that every single week, but it's the type of thing where as you engage with people, as you build the relationship with your followers, it opens up a lot of good doors on that front. Okay, so another one is the idea of reactions. And when I say reactions, I don't just mean people clicking the like button. Did you know that if instead of clicking the like button, someone does the brief hover and picks an emotional reaction, it actually has a bigger boost on the algorithm? So if they hit the love button, it counts more than if they hit. And in fact, there was a while, and they say they've pulled this, there was a while where if they hit the angry button, it actually would downgrade you a little bit. And then they got all this feedback and they were like, okay, wait, sometimes people aren't mad at the post, they're mad at the content, so we probably shouldn't do that, and they've readjusted the algorithm again. But when you can get people to engage on a deeper level, it counts more. Okay, also the idea of threaded comments. So I said when people comment, that gives you a boost. If you go in and you reply to them, and then they reply to you, if it moves to a conversational format, that's an even bigger boost than just getting the comments. So something as simple as just a quick reply going out to whoever has left you a comment, that can help give you a nice boost. Okay, so direct sharing would be another one, and this is also the same across both channels. I know most of my screenshots are coming from Facebook. So this is where someone sees a piece of content, and the push used to be, I'll get to you in a second, the push used to be you wanted people to share your content, right? Because if they share your content, then it gets to more people. And that's true, but Facebook also knows that there is a difference in your intent and commitment when you share it to your page versus when you share it to direct message or to a specific person. Because when you share it to your page, you're going, oh, that's cool, other people might like that. When you go, I'm gonna send it to Joe, if Joe doesn't like it and gets annoyed with you, that impacts you personally. You're taking a higher risk when you send a direct message than you are when you just share it to your page. So if we go back to that idea of the Pinocchio effect and wanting to judge things like people do, a direct message share has more of an impact than someone just sharing it to their page. So those are things we want to motivate. Okay, so we got a bunch of questions, so let me see. I got one more, and okay, let me do this last section here and then we'll be through this section and we'll take a question break. Okay. Related to that is the idea of engagement on shares. So if people do share your content to their page, and then people engage with their post of it, that they get the boost, but it also feeds back to you, and you get a boost. So as you're building networks in the industry, this is also a place where you can work with collaborative companies and brands that as you're sharing their content and you're getting engagement off of their content and they're getting a boost, and if they share some of your content, is everyone following? And again, you don't want to do it to the manufactured point. You only do it where it makes sense. Okay. All right, so we're going to take a quick question break. I know I had one back here and one up, so let's do red shirt first, and then we'll jump back. We'll do a couple. Okay.
I have 2 now. I'll do this one quick. So a page that I manage, I like it. Obviously, Facebook knows I manage that page.
Yes.
I love it to
Yes.
start the chain reaction of loving rather than liking.
Yes.
Is it like, dude, you can't do that?
It'll count, but it'll count less.
Okay.
Like than if a different person did it. But it'll still factor in just at a reduced rate.
Initial question was actually the differences between posts and ads. So a boosted post becomes an ad that I can generate things as ads.
Yes, so whether it's a post or an ad, any engagement is still going to come back to your core level ability to show up in the algorithm. You'll still get the boost. My gut, using Pinocchio effect, I don't have data to back this up, but just again, using the logic, is that a boosted post is going to reach more people than an ad when you get your organic push. So what I mean by that is when you take a post and you put a paid promotion on it, as you get engagement, they push to more people organically, to, as people engage. With an ad, they know it's an ad, it's intended as an ad, and in fact, if you're directly selling something, Facebook has very specifically said that should always be in an ad. If you put that in a post, they can read it through the semantics of the wording, they're gonna downgrade it. With an ad, you might get a little bit of organic exposure, but they don't tend to feed over to as much organic exposure unless people really get into like commenting and active engagement, okay? And then in the back, yeah, you.
Sort of a two-pronged question around Facebook groups.
Yes.
So if I create a group on my page for a community to sort of converse about things, if I'm posting not only to my feed, but to my page, but in that group, and that creates a dialogue, can you speak to like what that does for my...
So you're saying if you've done it on the group and you share the group post to your page?
Yeah, or vice versa, or if I'm sharing content to both within the kind of the private group.
Right.
That's created a community. And then also if I share out to groups I don't know, content out to.
Okay. So you're asking if you share your content into other people's groups. Yes. Okay. So let's start with that tail end one first. So first off, always read the terms of service of any group you join because a lot of them do not want you to do that. So clearly make sure those bases are covered first. Second, I can just go with keep Pinocchio effect and customers in the back of your mind of going, is what I'm about to share something I'm sharing because I want someone to see it or something that is truly relevant to the conversation that's happening here? And if I wasn't me and I didn't own the business, would I still feel the same way? Because a lot of times when we stop and we really ask ourselves that honestly, a lot of times we would not then proceed. Those are the times when we don't want to proceed. If it's no, this clearly answers the question, it's not violating the rules, this is something that's okay, by all means, there's not a problem doing that. I do encourage people to be a little more cautious when we're talking sharing Facebook page content into a Facebook group, because usually your page is designed to be more of a marketing forward message, ad forward message, and your group is designed to be more conversation. And if you do too much sharing of page content into that, you kind of dilute the safety and the trust factor within the group, and you run the risk of damaging your credibility and having less people engage. So again, super good time and place, yes. But on the overall, there's a reason you would have both a group and a page, and keeping them a little more independent makes good sense. Okay, I got time for one more, and then we got to keep rolling. So.
All right, just a quick question. So let's say I've got followers that have stopped seeing my information.
Yes.
Adding hashtags or ads, is that really going to push it back in front of them, or do I have to come up with something else to get it back in front of them for the algorithm?
So adding hashtags is not going to magically put it back in front of them. It may open the door to discovery if someone's searching by hashtag, that they might see it that way. Generally, once you've fallen off the radar, the only two ways to really get in front of someone is to do a targeted promoted post to re-get the exposure and get the opportunity to get that engagement and then keep it, or to put some type of content out that is good enough and strong enough that it gets a really strong organic response, which then leads the algorithm to say, you know what, this is being received really well, let's show it to a bigger group and see how it does. And if they continue to respond well, show it to a bigger group and to snowball that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so do you see value in originally boosting stuff small?
Absolutely.
In order to get back in front of those individuals?
Yes, if you have the budget for it, and by budget, if you've got like $150 a month you can play with, that's generally, unless you're the type of brand that has upwards of 250,000 or 500,000 followers on these channels, $150 a month is usually enough to say, okay, 2 or 3 times a month, we're gonna pick our very best content and we're gonna throw a boost on it. And the recommendation with that is not just to throw a boost on what you think will be best, give it about 24 hours organically. And if it's getting a good reception and it's getting good activity, add the boost then. Don't do it right from the start. So give it a chance to get some steam rolling first. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Let's keep rolling. I'm going to have a couple sections I'm probably going to skip through, so don't worry about that. And also, we have the room for about 30 minutes after we're done with the session. So I'm not offended if anyone starts to leave as we come up on that, but I'll stay until we basically have to clear the room and answer whatever. Okay, so video is very, very, very much being prioritized. How many of you are using video to some degree? Okay, how many of you want to use video, but you just don't know how or you're afraid? Okay, it's not as high as I thought it would be. Okay, so clearly there's lots of opportunities for video here, and clearly it's a direction you need to move. In fact, Instagram has said repeatedly that within the next year they will view themselves as a video platform, not as a photo platform. So algorithmically, there is always a boost going out to video, though that does also factor in, as we've talked about, cross-posting. Posting your video direct makes a big difference in what the reach will be as opposed to showing video from YouTube. So like if you have an active YouTube channel, pull a snippet of it, put that directly posted onto Facebook and onto Instagram. Don't just share it from someplace else, okay? Because the direct video will be fed much better. And let's see, okay, we're gonna jump through this section. Oh, no, we're not. We're gonna back up for a second. Okay, Instagram and Facebook, both of them. How many of you post at least once a day to these channels? Okay, for the most part, there's probably a good chance you need to stop. Because let's think about all the stuff we just went through with the algorithm. Every time you put a post out there, if someone doesn't engage with it, you're shooting yourself in the foot. And how many of you are fully confident that every single thing you post is super, super interesting as opposed to, I gotta phone it in because I feel obligated to put something up? Okay, you can have an extra cookie for being that interesting, but we all know that for the most part, that's not true. And it's the trap we fall into because it's just part of our habit and it's part of what we think we're supposed to be doing. And for a long time, I really just flat out told people, honestly, unless you're a news channel or you are truly like a content publisher, do not post every single day. The exception to that is as we've seen stories come in on both Instagram and on Facebook, there is a lot more room to utilize stories for additional posting that we would never put in our regular primary feed. So for example, when you're at a show like this, please do not put up 17 posts a day on your Instagram channel because you're taking pictures as you're going through places, okay? Use stories for that, by all means. Post it all to your stories, that's totally fine. And then at the end of the day, put up a carousel post that has all of your best images from the day and has some content. But don't just post, because again, that comes back to that idea that you cannot keep everyone's attention on every last one of them, and it becomes counterproductive and it can damage you. Stories are fed off of a different algorithm, and stories are designed for that type of content, so you have much more leeway there, and it's also how people expect to be able to use it. So real quick in the blue.
So I feel like previously, maybe this was like a few years ago, but I feel like I was at a PRI session where they're like, oh, post every day, at least once a day, and that's kind of changing, getting away from that.
Oh, there's still tons of people who will tell you to do that, but understand there is a difference. I've been in this industry for 26 years, which that dates, I worked my way through college way back in the 90s, building web pages and doing search engine optimization for companies. In all of those years, and in being on the conference circuit and working with like the top brains, I can tell you, there are the people who are focused on building followers, and there are people who are focused on the ROI. And the people who are focused on the ROI are the ones who will tell you, you do not need to post every day. Because what you are doing should be the stuff that is impacting your ROI and is looking at the big picture. And the people whose focus is on building followers, which if you're an influencer, that's definitely the route you want to go. But unless you are specifically an influencer, algorithmically, for the last 8 to 10 years, it has been true that posting every single day can damage you. And a great example of that I can give you, about a decade ago, I got called into a large popular, well-known newspaper located around our nation's capital to consult with their editorial team, who was down to like 4% reach on Facebook. And they're going, we can't get in front of anyone. And I'm looking through their data and I'm like, do you realize you're putting up 23 posts a day? And they're like, well, yeah, you know how many news stories there are? Okay, does everyone who follow you care about every single one of these news stories? Do you put all 21 of those stories on the front page of your physical paper? Well, no, we prioritize. Okay, what do you think we could try? So we cut them down to 4 posts a day for a month. And they went from 4 to 5% reach to 17% reach in a month, simply by doing the cutback. Because what it forced their editors to do was be so much more purposeful in what they were putting together and what they were putting out there, that more of what they put out was going to hit. And that's the big thing with me saying, I'm not saying you can't post every day, there will always be exceptions to the rule. But I can tell you, my restaurant posts once a day, my nonprofit posts probably once or twice a month. Most of the local businesses I work with might post 2 to 3 times a week, and even big companies I work with that are doing it right, usually still not daily, for all of those reasons. You have quick follow-up, and then we'll keep moving.
Follow-up. So
Yeah.
I feel like it's potentially like a quality over quantity type of thing.
Yes.
However, is there ever like a length of time that is too long to wait before your next post?
That's a great question. Okay. That's a great question. So I don't know. And honestly, to a degree, I've been curious and kind of trying to test that, because like my nonprofit in particular, I don't have time. I can't. I don't have the time. And there are times where I will go 3 months without putting a post up. And then I put a post up, and it still retains the same rate I've had previously, and it does great. That's anecdotal evidence. That's not, true evidence. So that one is going to be more testing. I do know if we look at what's called the last actor concept, so that's where they say who were the last so many things that you engaged with. Generally, the viewpoint is around 30 days. You don't want to ever go more than that. But for the most part, most companies are putting up content at least weekly. And even if it was 2 or 3 times a month, you're still pretty much going to be okay. Again, the quality over quantity is going to factor in heavily. Okay. So, quick question, because we have about 15 minutes. And when I look at what I have, do you want me to try and finish some of my notes? We'll do it by a show of hands. Or knowing you can have the slide deck, would you rather we just switch to Q&A at this point? How many want me to finish my deck? How many want Q&A? Oh man, that's like even amount. None of you get cookies now. I'm taking the cookies with me. Okay. So, okay, yeah, we'll split the difference. So I'm going to skip some stuff here, and we'll see what we get. Okay, so we're going to skip through that. And, okay, we talked about stories, so we don't have to hit that one. Okay, on Instagram, how many of you actively use stories on Instagram? Okay, how many of you actively use stories on Facebook? Okay, this is one of the places where I will say I make a break with my idea of publish unique content. If I'm doing to both, I publish via Instagram and I cross-post to Facebook. The reason I do that is because Instagram has better stickers and better extra features and better filters. And I can create better content natively within Instagram than I can on Facebook. So it makes more sense to me to do it in the one place and cross-post it, okay? That's just what works for me. But the sticker options that have been added, the fact that you can now put a link directly into your stories and someone can follow it over, that you can do the polls, you can do countdown, all of those interactive options, those are hugely beneficial to you. Now, not all of them, if you publish them on Instagram, will carry over to Facebook. So like if I put, some of them do now, so off the top of my head, I'm not going to be able to come up with it. But there's a couple that if you put on Instagram, they're not going to function. They'll just kind of sit there on Facebook. But there are ones that will work on both. When you use a sticker and someone engages with it, that's a huge, huge bump. In fact, I think I got data on this one. Probably on the next one. No, I don't. It's like 83% of stories will see higher engagement if they utilize an interactive sticker. I mean, it's a big, big number. So if you haven't played with them yet, that is definitely one I would encourage you to do. Okay, so let's jump through these. Oh, we talked some about trying to cheat the algorithm. I've literally seen article after article suggest this. Okay, so not everyone will be able to see it, but up here, so you see I have my primary hashtag, I have my location tag, and then they'll put a bunch of extra hashtags down here, and they'll cover it with a sticker. So if you, now knowing what you know about an algorithm, were an algorithm, and you said, someone just put all this content in the corner and covered it with a sticker, what would you do? You'd probably downgrade it a little bit, wouldn't you? Because you think someone's trying to pull something over. So don't do it.
Real quick, I've actually done that before, but not with a sticker. I've matched you using the eyedropper tool, matched the color to a large portion of color, and then shrank it down.
So did you know that that was the absolute first trick that anyone used in search engine optimization, was to add content to the bottom of a page in the same color as the back of the page, and it's literally the first algorithmic update I ever read from Google saying, we now know how to discover this, and if you do it, we ding your page. I'm just saying, use that as you will. Okay, let me keep going, then we'll get to a couple more questions. Okay, so check those out. Okay, we're gonna skip through some video because you guys can get all of this. Okay, Reels, I have to say something about Reels. Okay, so we have TikTok, right? And everyone's all TikTok. Was there a TikTok session this week? There was one at SEMA, but I didn't see if there was one here. Okay. So, for years, I would come to these shows and they'd be like, will you teach on Snapchat? And I'd say, nope. And they're like, why? Because outside of influencers and the top tier businesses, Snapchat is not a high ROI possibility because the mindset people are in when they go there is not conducive to selling and marketing your products. Therefore, if you are a small business owner, you should not be stressing yourself out over using it. And I don't want to get everyone all hyped up with all the numbers and have them wasting their time. Because primarily, I always consulted for and taught at big companies, but I've worked with small companies, okay? So now I get the same, and we've watched Snapchat kind of stay, here in a top 10 channel, but bottom of the pack, and never really hit super, super hard. And now I get all the same questions for TikTok. And the thing I will tell you is to think about the conversation we had about intent. What is the mindset of someone when they go to a channel? Are they the mindset of someone who is prepared to receive the type of information you want them to receive and take the type of action you want them to take? What are they on that channel for, and what is that channel conducive to? So when we look at things like Reels, which is Meta's, but I don't put a lot of content out, and I'm very targeted on who my followers are. I'm not telling people to follow me on these channels. Actually, you kind of play a little hard to get, because I want them to want so much to get my information that they seek me out and find me and follow me, because then the likelihood that they're going to continue to engage with me is much, much higher, okay? My absolute worst scenario to enter consulting with a company was the company that caught, and they were so happy. We have like 80,000 followers on Facebook. And I was like, you really don't seem like the type of company that would have that. Oh, we partnered with this company and we gave away iPads. And I was like, okay. So you should really have about 12,000 followers, and I can't do anything to dump your crappy followers, and they're just going to be this giant weight that we have to drag around while we try to repair this, because there's never going to be anything I can do to get them to engage again. So that's why don't freak out about the followers. Freak out about the engagement and what's happening on that front. Okay. If you're coming, when you do this math, on Facebook, if you've got less than 5,000 likes, you're like a truly small business. Aim to be around 8 to 10%. If you're there, you're doing like really good. You should be happy. If you're sitting in that 42% range, you could be like, Jen will personally bake me a cookie because you're kicking butt. If you're less than 50,000 people, 2 to 5% is really good. And if you're in those, once you get above 6 digits, honestly, even if you're at 1% reach, 2% reach, you are doing outstanding. Okay, so that kind of gives you a ballpark to start at. On Instagram, 12 to 15% reach is about the good side of average. So again, if you're above that, you're doing great. And if you're looking at your engagement rate, because same thing you do to calculate reach, you can go back and look at engagement and calculate it. So on Facebook, you're looking at, again, like 0.064%. No, there's another 0 for talking engagement, sorry, and it drops to 2, not 6. It's like 0.002, or it might be 0.002. It's really low. On Instagram, it's around 3% for your engagement. So go and run those numbers and see what it looks like. If you're like, oh crap, my numbers are terrible, Jen would be so disappointed in me. Know that no, I am not disappointed in you, because all of this is really, really difficult and complicated. So it's not where you are, it's what you do with it. So if you find you have a reach problem, the first thing I want you to do is literally cut your posting in half. I don't care what channel it is, half the posts that you are currently putting out, just for a month. Just give it a month so that you can kind of reset and really be thinking about what type of content performs well. Go into your insights, look through the history and go, okay, did we put some post up that got really great response? What was it about that post that mattered? So on my nonprofit, if I'm telling an impact story, that does great, absolutely great. Okay, if I need a boost, I'm telling an impact story. On the restaurant, if I can get them to engage in some type of humor or something funny that has to do with the actual like staff of the diner, because literally my town is like 2,700 people. It's a little 60-seat diner. 90% of the people in there on a regular basis are regulars, okay? So that's what hits with them. Find the pattern and utilize that pattern to make sure you're getting the really good, likely to get engaged with content out there, and then reevaluate and see where you end up and fine tune from there, okay? Okay, so I told you that one, told you that, okay. We talked a little bit about the boosted posts. As part of repairing things, when you're going, okay, here's the type of content I think will do well, let's put it out there. Like I said, give it that 24-hour window. If it starts to perform well, throw a boost on it. If you have content you have to put up that you know is not going to perform well, but there's a reason you have to put it up, sandwich it between 2 posts that you know will do really well, or plan to boost the post that comes after that one, okay? Don't put the boost on the post that you don't think will do super great, because you're kind of wasting both the money and some of the other stuff, but plan to boost the one that comes after that, okay? So being strategic about how it goes in. Okay, and we'll skip the whole last section of this, so let me get a screenshot up there for you, because I was going to walk you through some of how we do it for us. Okay, I got a couple resources here for you that, again, will be on the list. These are sites I've vetted, I trust. They give really good information if you want to dig deeper into some of the how-tos for some of these channels. And then, again, the reminder, if you want to shoot me an email at this address, I'll send you that workbook, and I'll also send you the slide deck. So we are officially at our end point. Gary, can we take like 15 minutes of questions before I got to clear the stage, or you need me to take them outside? Okay, I'm going to pack up and take my cookies outside. Come see me, and if you're patient enough to wait in line, you can get a cookie and an answer. Thank you, guys.